In this video, I'm going to be showing you a foolproof bias strategy that allows you to predict the bias about 90% of the time. Keep in mind, I didn't say 100%. Can it be 100%? Sure, if you're patient. But this is my findings, and I'm not going to show you proof because I want you to actually go backtest yourself after taking the information I give you, and you're going to see for yourself. I literally have nothing to prove to you, and if you go backtest this in your charts yourself, I guarantee you'll find what I'm saying is pretty accurate. Without further ado, let's just get started. Don't forget to use code DODGY for a discount on Apex. Very, very good accounts if you want to practice this. You can get like a $50,000 account for like 30 bucks, so why not try it? So if you guys already don't know, I trade inversion fair value gaps. So typically what I wait for is I wait for a sell side liquidity sweep, okay, like this, where we come down, we sweep the low or some sort of low to the left. You know, maybe this is a giant wick, okay, from the previous day low, or, you know, the London low, you know, whatever, okay. And we come down, we get an inversion fair value gap back to the upside. Now, this is my entry model, but how do I make it so I'm right on bias 90% of the time? Well, my win rate for iFVGs is about 90%, you know, with context and narrative. With pattern trading, it's about 70%. But when I know the context and narrative, it's about 90%. So how can we translate that into a foolproof bias where you're going to get the bias right 90% of the time? Well, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go from the 1 minute time frame or the 30-second time frame of where I'm looking for this model. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the hourly time frame and now basically use what I just told you, but in the higher time frame. Okay, so let's just find a little example. As you can see right here, we have two bearish fair value gaps, one here and one here. Now, my model basically says that if we have two fair value gaps in the leg, I typically combine them, right? So let's say I'm on the 1 minute time frame right now, and this is the 1 minute chart. Is this an entry I would take? 100%. Okay, this is a good entry I would take. We swept this low here. We delivered out of this fair value gap here, and it just looks good. But this is the hourly time frame, and I don't really trade the hourly time frame. I'm trying to get into it more, but I don't really trade it. Okay, this is out of my expertise. So why am I still predicting the bias 90% of the time? Because I'm just using what I'm using in the 1 minute and translating that to the hourly. So if we get this candle closure, right, no matter if it's AM session, London session, then I'm going to be bullish for the rest of that session and only look for long setups. And you can see it works out very wonderfully, okay? I'm not going to take short setups if I see an hourly inversion like that because I know how accurate my model is in the 1 minute time frame. So why would I fade an hourly inversion on the higher time frame, right? I'm only going to be bullish in that sense, okay? Let's go to another example. Right here, okay? Basically right here, okay? We swept liquidity. We have an hourly inversion back to the upside, and look how much momentum prints back above this. Okay, this is a lot of momentum. So automatically, I'm going to be bullish for that session based off of how much we inverse this and how much momentum we push through this with, right? So I'm basically waiting for this, and then okay, I'm bullish the rest of the session. Okay, same thing with like this one right here. Right? This one swept buy side liquidity. Okay, we have an hourly inversion here. And what does that make me? Well, that makes me bearish because if this is the 1 minute time frame, I'm going to be bearish on the 1 minute. I'm going to take a short position. So it translates to the higher time frame, and I'm just going to be bearish for that session, and it just works. Okay, it works beautifully. Now, is there going to be times where you may take a long setup or a short setup and it might fail? Right? Yes. But are you still going to typically get the bias right 90% of the time if you're using my entry criteria on the 1 hour time frame? Of course you are. Okay, I'm going to post a link in the description, and it's going to be my iFVG ratings guide, and it's made for the 1 minute chart. I'm not going to lie, okay? But I didn't plan this. This also works in the hourly because time is fractal. You can find these same setups in the hourly, the 4 hour, the daily, and they're still going to have a very high win rate. And if you do know the context, like I said, it's going to have a 90% win rate at least, okay? Your pattern trading, maybe like 70. So that's really all I'm looking for, okay? Same thing here, right? We have a hourly fair value gap, we inverse it, okay? So where's my bias? Well, my bias is going to be obviously that next high, right? Right here, okay? Same thing with, let's see if we can find another one. Okay, right here, look. We have these 3 hourly inversion fair value gaps, right? We V-shape above, we took out this low right here, we delivered from a fair value gap to the left. It's a very big one, but we still did. And we break these bearish inverses. So naturally, my bias is going to be bullish, right? Until we hit this 4-hour high. So I'm constantly getting the bias right because I'm constantly using these higher time inversions. Now, the only other thing that I want to mention here to you guys is, when do I typically get the bias wrong? When I typically get the bias wrong, we're usually chopping. That's most of the time where I get the bias wrong. So, for example, we have an hourly inverse here, and you can see it actually does get inverse here, but we just go down after. And if I ever see this choppiness right here and I'm trying to predict the bias, that's when I typically get the bias wrong. So how do you combat that? Well, you combat that by, if we ever are consolidating, even though we might have a higher time inversion, just keep your bias neutral and be open to longs and shorts, okay? The only time I'd ever like marry a bias is if we really sweep below, we're in discount, you got a giant momentum back up and it stands out. Okay, if I back away 10 feet from my screen and I can still see it, that's probably a good play. Okay, right? I can't, this is going to be much harder to see if I back away from my screen than if I were to see this, right? This is going to stand out to me much more, right? And again, it just goes to show, like, you know, that's important. Now, there are little nuances, and I teach all this in my live stream, okay, which, again, this is, I'm just scratching the surface because this is a free video. I don't want to give too much value out. If you're interested in watching my live streams, there is a link in the description for that and a mentorship, which I'll talk about in a second. But, you know, you're probably wondering, oh, but Dodgy, there's a fair value gap here that loses. But this one, look where we stop. Look how close we stopped this low. Whenever I see that, usually I know we're going to go lower and re-hit that low. So like that's an inversion where I wouldn't even take it or talk about it on my stream, right? Because I know we're going to likely go lower there. But that's like this is a video that scratches the surface, so I can't go over every single unique example for you guys, all right? You have to join my live streams and be my Discord for quite a while if you're going to want to, you know, learn stuff like that. But I'm just showing you the concept and how I get the bias right most of the time, right? I'm literally just going to the hourly time frame, you know, you can go to the 4-hour time frame, and I'm just waiting for these very easy swing points to get broken, or these very easy inversion fair value gaps. Now, here's a good example of, oh, I would have been very, 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 very bullish if this broke, but did it ever break? No. So automatically, I can't be bullish here. So I'm either 1, neutral, or 2, I'm bearish. So I can't be bullish unless it breaks. And you can see I probably would not have tried longing too much if we never broke this, which we never did. So even on this red candle, I'm not really the guy getting wrecked, right? Because I'm not even going to long in the first place if I don't think the higher time frame is bullish because we didn't inverse this for value gap, okay? So it saves you a lot as well, which is a good sign. This one, another really good example. This one comes down, sweeps this low, and we just inverse this. And you can see the wick actually holds this. It never closed back below, so that's still valid. But like, okay, we got this hourly inversion. I'm going to be bullish until this high. So it's basically just me taking a very high win rate model on the lower time frame and just using it on the hourly. Now, the difference is the 1 minute time frame will show you dozens of these setups a day. You know, there will be tons of 1 minute setups a day. The problem with, you know, the higher time frame is we're not going to get that clean hourly inversion every day. Going into, you know, next Monday, I don't really have much to work with here, not going to lie. So Monday, I probably wouldn't marry myself to a bias, meaning I'm not really trying to predict the bias, but those days where I do marry a bias and I think it's very obvious, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is like a very light bulb, you know, 1 minute inversion setup like this one right here. These are the days where I'm constantly sizing up, constantly getting the bias right because I'm having the patience to wait to trade days like this where I truly know the bias is. So again, you can see I just started a mentorship, and I told one of my students this, and ever since then, okay, ever since I started talking about this in my classes, my little private classes and stuff, I mean, these students are all in my mentorship getting payouts, and they're struggling. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was like, there's no way I'm ever gonna post these guys on YouTube. Like, they're struggling too much, and towards the end of the mentorship, they're finally getting payouts and stuff, which if you are interested in joining, it's not cheap, and I don't accept a lot of people, but there is a call. If you want to book a call, just click the link in the description below. But like, they're doing good and they're getting these payouts because they're waiting for obvious scenarios like this. And, you know, that's one thing I tell my mentorship students compared to like my free students. I'm like, my free students are like taking every fair value gap. They're not caring about bias. And these guys are waiting for these very high probability closes, these very high probability biases where you know the bias is going to be bullish here and you're sizing up, you know, we're going to go to the next high, right? And this allows for these big RR trades because you're getting it on the 1 minute and you're holding for like a 4-hour high, you know, so it all goes hand in hand. It's a lot to explain, but this is just a video that's going to scratch the surface. And like I said before, I literally have nothing to prove. If you go backtest this yourself, you're going to find a lot of success, but it definitely will not come after one video. And this is definitely not going to be a video where you can watch and automatically become profitable. I don't want to lie to you guys. And I hate that. I'm a Christian. I grew up Christian. And yeah, I'm just completely be honest. So that is it for this video. Don't forget to use code Dodgy if you want a, you know, if you can get a $50,000 account for pretty cheap, just to practice and mess around with. You can maybe even practice taking these trades that are going to last hours and hours off these if you want. You know, it's up to you. But don't forget to get an account. Use code Dodgy. But that's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Peace.